Can I talk from the table then?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. If I don't have to stand up.
Yeah, just get that microphone right on
Okay.
chin.
Okay. I'm gonna sit in the middle then. I got my coat. There too? Apparently there's a typo in the final draft of recommendation. Somebody sent me an email, but it was already done and submitted. And I didn't have time to send it to Nancy. Oh, it's okay.
It would have been my typo.
Was it? Oh, well, sorry.
And just make sure when you are speaking,
And it was a really minor thing. It was like
All right, good evening, everyone.
wrong word.
Welcome to tonight's City Council regular meeting for Tuesday, January 21st. One study session item for tonight. We do have two council members out right now, but they will be running a couple minutes late. I did receive a call. Just some car troubles, but both Member Wright and Member Prang will be here in attendance in a few minutes. With that, I want to go ahead and kick off the study session item. We have the Affordable Housing Task Force here tonight, here to present their recommendations to City Council based on their year-long effort of studying affordable housing. Director of Community Development, Brad Power, do you want to kick us off?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Brad Power, Director of Community Development. Yes, the Affordable Housing Task Force is indeed here to present their final report and recommendations to you, and that represents about a little over a year of work on their part. And we as staff would like to thank them for all the work that they did over that period of time. It was a pretty complex task. And they embraced it, and they embraced it well and did some pretty significant work around it. I'd also, again, on behalf of staff, like to recognize the consultants that facilitated the meetings of the group. That includes Tasha Jones of LV Jones Consulting, and Tasha has rejoined us tonight to listen to the presentation, as well as Glenda Norville of G4 Strategies provided the facilitation of their work. And then personally, I'd just like to thank some members of my own staff who were in the boat for this process to provide the staff level support that the task force required. That includes Nancy Fenton, Shelley Warwick, John Vobril, and Brian Eisen. So with that, I'd just like to turn it over to the members of the task force to carry on with the remainder of their presentation. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Reyes, and it's an honor to be here with you all tonight. As a small child growing up in the low-income apartments of our neighboring city of Sheridan, I can recall my dream of one day living in a safe house. A cozy and spacious house where you couldn't hear neighbors fighting or vacuums cleaning. A beautiful house with a yard full of space, with a dog running around it, and a garden full of fresh vegetables. A house where you didn't have to stress when inspection time came around because if any small thing was out of place, your safe place to stay could be at risk. A house to call ours. A house that we could make our forever home. Now, my work ethic has always outshined my dreams, even as a child. I graduated from Englewood High School in 2007 as a Daniels Fund Scholar and went on to be the first in my family to go to college and graduate with a bachelor's degree. But I didn't stop there. In addition to creating a wonderful career in education here in Englewood schools, I also went on to obtain a master's degree. I did all of this while raising a family and often working more than one job. I felt like I had made it, like I beat the odds, like I would finally get that dream home that I dreamed of since I was a small child. But that is not the economy or reality we live in. But I am still one of the lucky ones, and I am filled with gratitude because for the last decade, I have been able to raise our children in a house that we rent here in this beloved city of Englewood. A house that a wonderful landlord so graciously allowed us to move into even though we didn't qualify for it. A house that draws community members at Halloween, Christmas, and on hot summer days. A wonderful house, but nonetheless, a house that is not truly ours. It's no secret that there are many out there like us, many that have been denied that basic American dream of owning a home. Hard work and a good job are not enough in today's market, especially here in the city of Englewood. I've watched far too many amazing families move out of Englewood because they couldn't buy a home here. These were classmates, students, family members, friends, employees. They were valued community members. Now we too are faced with this reality as we watch the market continue to demolish our dreams of owning a home. I share my story not for sympathy, but to shed light on a crisis that affects so many others. It's a reminder that behind every statistic, there are real people, real families, and real dreams at stake. But we are not powerless. Together, as a united community, we can rise to this challenge and implement solutions, ensuring that every family has the opportunity to achieve the stability, dignity, and pride that comes with a place to call home. Thank you for your compassion and for your commitment to building a brighter, more inclusive future for Englewood.
Hi. Excuse me. My name is Jake Gilbert. I wanted to be on the task force because I'm concerned that high prices are causing displacement of longtime Englewood residents. My parents moved from the Midwest to Denver when I was 4 years old. They arrived in Denver with 2 young kids in tow and no jobs lined up. They managed to eke out a living in Denver for a couple years before we moved to a rental house in Southwest Englewood in 1996. By 2002, they had saved up enough money on 1 full-time and 1 part-time income to buy the house we were renting for about $150,000. My brother and I each had our own bedroom. We had a detached garage and a yard. Needless to say, this story might not be possible today. By 2021, my wife and I had young kids of our own living in a 575 square foot rental house near Oxford and Broadway. We knew we needed more space and we desperately wanted the security of homeownership so that we would never be told it was time to pack up and move out. I felt we would most likely end up moving somewhere cheaper, but if we could stay in Englewood, our kids would grow up near their grandparents, their aunts and uncles, and their cousins. We ultimately bought a house in Southwest Englewood but made many compromises. The house was only about 60% bigger than our rental. Our 3 kids would have to share 1 bedroom. It needed a lot of work and lacked many of the amenities a lot of people take for granted. And still, we needed significant financial help from family to afford the down payment, a resource that is not available to many people. I often wonder if, on this trajectory, any of my kids will have the option to stay in Englewood or anywhere in the Denver metro area for that matter. Growing up, Englewood was working class and attainable. I knew plenty of Englewood dynasties, multi-generational Englewood families who had the incalculable benefit of living in the same 6.5 square mile area as their grandparents, cousins, second cousins, aunts, uncles, etc. As more people I went to school with get priced out of the area, I see this community fabric fraying. I hope the work that the task force did can help mitigate the damage.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Aaron Martinez. I live near the intersection of Oxford and Sherman. I'm an Englewood homeowner, and I've lived here since 2018. And it was a challenge. The only way that I was able to purchase my home in 2018 was because it was in such poor condition. I lost out on about 15 different offers that I made and finally found a home that lasted through that first weekend on the market. I'm also a nonprofit affordable housing professional. I work for Urban Land Conservancy in Denver. Today I want to share my perspective on the Affordable Housing Task Force recommendations as both a resident that's deeply invested in this community and someone who works daily to address housing challenges. Our task force spent over a year analyzing data, engaging stakeholders, and exploring innovative solutions to address the housing crisis in Englewood. And the key takeaway from this work is clear. Doing nothing is not an option. Our city faces a housing shortfall of at least 2,500 units, and nearly 50% of our renters in the city are cost burdened. They're spending more than 30% of their income on their housing. These numbers reflect an urgent need for action to ensure that Englewood remains a diverse and inclusive and accessible community. As a homeowner and somebody who loves my neighborhood and loves the character of Englewood, I understand concerns about change. change of the character of the city, change in density. But I also know that maintaining affordability is essential for preserving the unique character of our neighborhoods. We need policies that allow young families, seniors, and hardworking individuals to continue to call Englewood home. This task force recommendations, as you've seen in your packet, are calling for the city to make real investment in affordable housing. It also calls for educating the public on why affordable housing benefits everyone, not just the users of affordable housing. But these recommendations are also, I feel, are balanced and thoughtful and grounded in evidence and data. As a professional in this field, I've seen the transformative power of affordable housing firsthand. When people have stable, affordable homes, they contribute more fully to their communities, our local businesses thrive, our neighborhoods become stronger. I am proud of the task force's emphasis on preserving naturally occurring affordable housing and expanding access through creative strategies like community land trusts and accessory dwelling units. I urge the council to adopt these recommendations and to commit the investment required to make them a reality. This is not just a policy issue. This is not just a political issue. It's about the future of Englewood and the lives of our residents. Together, we can ensure that our city grows in a way that reflects our values and strengthens our community for generations to come. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joe Phillips. I'm the proud owner of Fellow Traveler, a business right here in downtown Englewood. When my partners and I decided to open our doors, we chose Englewood because it felt like a city on the rise, a hardworking, growing community where people could plant roots and build a future. My wife and I hope to do the same. Over 5 years, we put in what we thought were competitive bids on homes here, only to lose out time and time again. Eventually, we had to buy elsewhere, even though we wanted to live in the same community as our business. Today marks the 3-year anniversary of Fellow Traveler. In that time, I've had the privilege of getting to know Englewood and its residents. Some of those incredible people work alongside me at Fellow Traveler, and I've heard firsthand about the challenges they face trying to find affordable housing here. This housing crisis didn't start in Englewood, and it's not confined to our city, but we can and must be part of the solution. High housing costs don't just harm residents, they hurt small businesses like mine. When people can't afford to live near where they work, they face longer commutes, higher transportation costs, and more stress. That makes it harder to attract and retain employees, especially for small businesses without deep pockets. On top of that, less disposable income means fewer customers dining out, shopping locally, or supporting the very businesses that make this community vibrant. A lack of affordable housing creates infertile soil for a community to grow, hurting both residents and businesses alike. Englewood has the opportunity to rise to this challenge. We need to commit to addressing the housing crisis head on. That means embracing new developments, increasing density, and exploring innovative solutions. Together, we can make Englewood a place where everyone has the chance to thrive. Thank you. Next, to explain how we got here, I'd like to introduce Sherry Stinson and Hugo Weinberger, please.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor Sierra. First, I just want to say thank you so much for your continued effort and commitment around this important conversation impacting our community. Over the past year, we have learned so much. We started by digging into the city's root policy housing needs assessment, and we used the data to really uncover what we believe to be the most immediate and pressing housing needs facing our community today. From there, we learned about the different types of housing that falls under this very broad umbrella term of affordable housing. We started with naturally occurring affordable housing, which is the backbone of Englewood for forever and what we hope to preserve. We learned about transitional and permanently supportive housing, which addresses our continuously growing homelessness crisis. And then we learned about the missing middle housing, so that condo that's affordable to the first-time home buyer, or the single-family home that keeps the family in the school district that their children attend. And then We also learned about different municipalities and entities and what they're doing to champion affordable housing within the state. So we heard from Corey with Denver Metro Habitat for Humanity and their housing programs. We learned about, we heard from CHAFA on the Colorado Affordable Housing Fund, or Prop 123 funds, and how they allocate those. We learned about LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits, and how those subsidies are applied in Englewood. We also heard from the Colorado Housing Division of Housing, the host division, and how they have generated revenue streams and where they've applied those funds and how they lend to affordable housing development or preservation and acquisition of affordable housing. And then we heard from the City of Longmont on their inclusionary zoning ordinance and their fee in lieu option. And then we also heard from ECLT on the community land trust model and how they're creating permanently affordable housing throughout the state. And then we dug into Englewood locally. So we heard about the different lots that the city owns and the potential for future adaptation for affordable housing development. And we dug into Code Next and looked at cottage zoning and ADU allowances. And then we heard about the city's future Prop 123 commitment. And so from all of this information, we have pulled a few key data points that we have used to inform the recommendations that we're bringing to you tonight. And so I'm going to turn it over to Hugo to discuss this. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Hugo Weinberger. I'm a business and property owner in Englewood. We heard a lot of interesting facts during our time with the task force, and we've included a few of them to highlight as part of this presentation. Sorry if some of them are redundant. According to the Englewood Housing Needs Assessment, the city is 2,500 units short of housing. We need a variety of diverse housing options to accommodate the evolving needs of our city's residents. This doesn't mean just low-income housing, but also additional supply of 80 to 120% AMI housing. The for-sale market in Englewood values have tripled since 2000, with the sharpest gains over the last 10 years. Housing prices and rental rates have far outpaced wage growth. And that has led to 50% of the renters in Englewood being cost burdened, paying greater than 30% of their household income towards rent. And that only 23% of our residential lots are zoned for 4 or more dwellings. The majority of our city is single-family homes, duplexes, and large apartment buildings. We have a huge gap in missing middle housing that we're hopeful our recommendations can help solve. Our group is made up of many different backgrounds and perspectives. To talk more about our diverse voices are Kevin Wright and Aaron Martinez.
Good evening, Council. Kevin Wright. I'm Julian Tufts. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. As we deliberate on the future of our housing policies, I must express my profound concerns regarding the current trajectory of the Affordable Housing Task Force, particularly in relation to the densification and developer fines. It's important to note that my views have consistently represented a minority. I've never approved of Code Next, so this was definitely a challenge for me to be involved with this. I strongly believe that instead of imposing a $269,000 fine on a developer to opt out of building affordable housing, we should be ensuring that such housing is actually built, that we don't fine them, we allow them to build it for us. This fine serves as a more buyout option than an incentive, effectively allowing developers to sidestep the creation of truly affordable units. Moreover, the recent decision by our neighbors in Littleton, who were faced with this same dilemma, do we densify our neighborhood or not? It's too bad we couldn't follow their model and lead and put it on hold. Englewood too should have walked the same path. Densification poses a significant threat to the small town character that makes our city unique, a sentiment recently reinforced by numerous candidates during the board interviews that you were conducting, including our respected community member, Jim Woodward, who said he felt that this was a small town, and once we start building, it'll be large. Imposing further fees on landlords will likely lead to increased rental costs, counteracting the very goal of affordability we aim to achieve. We must preserve the essence of what makes Englewood a desired place to live, not transform it into something unrecognizable to its citizens. In conclusion, I urge council to consider these points seriously. We should strive for policies that foster genuine and sustainable growth in affordable housing without compromising the character and affordability of our community. Let's take a cue from Littleton and focus on real solutions that reflect the will and needs of our people. Thank you.
I think to follow on with Kevin's point there, we had a lot of varying and diverse opinions throughout the past year. People coming from different perspectives with different beliefs of the nature of government and the value of affordable housing. And we had very robust conversations and not to the point of arguments, but I think and honestly, this is one of the things I'm most proud of our work on the task force. I really feel like everybody was able to share their voice, not only share it, but we're able to be heard by the task force. And so in doing that, we heard lots of concerns about what are we recommending here? What are we concerned about? And I think that's what we're focusing on at this point is what were some of those concerns? And I think the things that rose to the top for me is we don't want to write a blank check for developers. The very nature of for-profit real estate development is almost always extractive in nature. Housing is traded as a commodity, and we see a lot of downsides to that. So we had healthy discussion around how could some of these recommendations be abused. And so we just wanted to make it clear we don't want to write a blank check for-profit developers. We want to be very aware of the dangers of corporate and venture capital ownership of single-family homes. And we want to be very protective of the naturally occurring affordable housing that exists in our city. So those mom and pop landlords, those small homes, those duplexes, that these policies do not put undue burden on those folks. Thank you. And I'm going to pass it off to Samantha and Sophia. Sophie.
Good evening. My name is Samantha Hurst. I'm a homeowner in Englewood for about the past 2 years. I'm going to talk about our strategic vision and principles and get to our recommendations when I hand it off to Sophie. Our strategic vision is up on the slide here. I'm not going to read it verbatim. I'm just going to tell you that it exists and how we came up with it as part of our process for this whole year. So when we met about a year ago, it's a pretty diverse group. We all came here for different reasons, but we did have some shared values. So we took those values and we came up with a statement to condense that into a statement so that we had something of a North Star to follow while we worked towards actually drafting recommendations. So guiding principles, thanks. Based on everything we learned as a group in the past year and discussed, we understood that the challenges to creating more affordable housing in Englewood are very complex. But to address these challenges, we've outlined 5 guiding principles that we want City Council to use when they start developing approaches to these challenges. So I'm going to quickly run through these 5 principles. 1 is data-driven. The Root Policy Research Housing Assessment already gave us a lot of data about the existing housing needs for Englewood. But we, as a group, also recommend that we continue doing these housing assessments on a periodic basis, not just a one-off, so that we know trends as they're happening. Number 2, commitment of investment. We have recommendations, but we actually need the city to sufficiently dedicate staff and resources to further these recommendations. 3 is get creative. Englewood is not a large city, but I believe that actually gives us an opportunity to be more flexible and creative. We need to expand all kinds of housing options and programs and foster multiple partnerships. 4 is engage and inform the community. The city needs to tell the story of how Englewood will benefit from affordable housing. I think a lot of people still don't understand how the city as a whole can benefit from that and benefit everyone. We also need to engage the community in creating those solutions together. Last is go deep. We want to address the entire housing continuum. That can mean everything from not just affordable rentals, but affordable home ownership, permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, but that becomes a long list. So I'm going to hand it off to Sophie to actually talk about our recommendations.
Hi, I'm Sophie. Can you hear me? I'm an Englewood renter. Huh? Closer?
Yeah, we're not getting the microphone. Go ahead, Sophie.
Okay. Can you hear me?
No, not yet.
Oh,
It's on. Just
really, really close. Okay.
There we go.
Sorry about that. I'm Sophie. I'm an Englewood renter. Thank you for having us. What we present here tonight doesn't represent the full scope of our recommendations. Of course, the full report contains more detail. My summary kind of focuses on the framework that we believe is needed to continue the work of making housing more accessible and stable for all Englewood residents. We came to a consensus through our work that meaningful support for affordable housing in Englewood requires a dedicated affordable housing fund that delivers predictable funding from a variety of sources. We recommend the city conduct a thorough analysis of funding options and prioritize funding sources that distribute impact across multiple stakeholders and leverage profits from property sales and ownership in the city. Our report lists possible sources to consider. In order to provide ongoing support and oversight for affordable housing funding and initiatives, the city should create an affordable housing advisory board. The advisory board would assist with implementation and recommendations and monitor affordable housing fund allocations and success. We also propose establishing the full-time role of affordable housing coordinator, who will conduct annual reviews, champion affordable housing initiatives, facilitate public-private partnerships, and provide information, oversight, and support to the Affordable Housing Board. We recommend continuing to streamline city processes related to the development of affordable housing and to continue to foster partnerships with developers. We recommend requiring developers to designate a meaningful percentage of units in new multifamily developments as affordable or a significant fee in lieu be paid. We recommend expanding opportunities for lot subdivision, cottage house development, and diverse housing types. The city should explore ways to provide and connect Englewood residents to housing assistance, such as affordable homeownership programs, temporary renter utilities assistance, and other resources that encourage housing stability. We should find ways to prioritize help for residents with children in Englewood schools or other relevant ties to the city. Creating infrastructure for housing policy and support in Englewood will position us to respond to housing needs in our community into the future. And for our closing, I'm going to give it to Corey and Hugo.
What is possible? A lot is possible if the city further advances our recommendations. One recommendation is to allow for more density in residential areas by allowing ADUs and cottage house development, and by taking it a step further to allow these small lots to be subdivided and sold off individually. The reality is we need both higher density housing and more easily financed small home construction to tackle our problem effectively and provide adequate, attainable housing opportunities. We live in a world where land is too valuable to just build a cottage house on it. But to allow a lot to be split and a back of a lot to be sold to allow a small lot development would help increase the supply of these types of houses. The benefit is reducing the number of naturally affordable front houses that would ultimately be scraped, allowing our neighborhoods to keep some of the character while allowing cottage houses to be built in the backyard with alley access. This will result in new affordable homes being developed within established neighborhoods, helping create this missing middle housing our city is in such dire need of. The city should help encourage this by partnering with developers and community land trusts and helping streamline processes to bring modular builders and manufacturers to the table who can help decrease time to build as well as construction costs. As previously mentioned, the city needs additional supply of all housing types, including market rate multifamily development. Our city has very few new buildings constructed that are small multifamily buildings between 4 and 16 units, with few lots zoned to allow for this type of small unit multifamily development. Larger multifamily developments should be welcomed in appropriate areas of the city, and we can dictate through code that a percentage of these units need to be affordable. We can also require developers to create tenant equity vehicles, allowing renters to earn monthly cash back or periodic profit sharing, helping reduce overall rent costs with a preference given to Englewood residents.
Good evening. My name is Corey Whitaker, and I'm an affordable housing developer. I'll continue with what is possible. And really what I want to reiterate is it's all of these recommendations that make things possible. It's not one recommendation. And so when we're looking at what is possible, it takes multiple things. So if we think of public and private affordable housing development, it takes that affordable housing coordinator to establish that relationship with a nonprofit, to work with, to guide them on what affordable housing funding within the city of Englewood looks like and how to access that. It requires partnership amongst a developer and the city to go after government funding, to go after state funding, to buy a property in Englewood to develop into affordable housing. It requires that partnership and these recommendations to streamline those processes so that developer knows that they can get that affordable development done if these things come together. And so it takes multiple things out of this toolbox to make these things happen. Go to the next, thanks. And I think another thing that these recommendations do is it creates the ability for the city of Englewood to be nimble and to react to the changing needs of their residents. And so by creating a housing role, we now have somebody that is focused on housing issues and focused on the ever-changing needs of housing. We have an advisory board that is supporting that role and advising on housing issues. We have a fund that provides the resources to go and tackle those issues. And so when the market shifts, because the market will always shift, something will happen, the city has the tools and they have the resources to react to those shifts. So if that shift is foreclosure prevention, you have a role, you have a fund, you have those resources to prevent that, to prevent residents of Englewood from facing foreclosure. If there's a rental crisis and there's some rental assistance needed, you have those resources within a fund, within a coordinator to address those resources. So these aren't all just for new developments and unlocking new opportunities, but it's also reacting to market changes and to those things that are affecting the residents. It's providing you the resources and the tools to do that. And I think I want to close by just kind of a quick overview. So you've heard from us, you've heard from some people on our task force's housing journey. You've heard all the different innovative strategies that we took into consideration and learned about on what other cities are doing, what other nonprofits are doing. You heard the data coming from the housing report that is facing Englewood. You've heard the points of view that different people amongst our task force have. And then you heard our recommendations, a summary of our recommendations and what we think is going to be the most successful things for the city of Englewood to do to create more affordable housing and preserve more affordable housing. And so, and you just heard what is possible, what we think is possible if you implement these recommendations. So this is the point of the process where we get to turn that work over to you. And you all represent the residents of Englewood. And this is your opportunity to take these recommendations that we've worked on for over a year and determine how you can implement them and how you can turn them into something that then benefits the people that you represent in Englewood. How that can create the opportunity for stable and safe housing, how it can create that opportunity for people to put down roots in the city of Englewood and be invested in the city because they know they have housing security here. So thank you for your time. Appreciate you listening to our presentation.
Members of the Affordable Housing Task Force, thank you very much for your time, your commitment over the past year, and thank you very much for the presentation, the recommendations for tonight. I think it's gonna definitely spur a lot of questions and comments, so I'll let members of council chime in. Member Noonan-Camp, if you want to kick us off.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to see all of you. Thank you so much for being here and for just this incredible body of work that you've shared with us. To my colleagues, I will say, Member Anderson and I had the opportunity to observe the work of this task force over the last year, but over the last few months when they've actually been forming their recommendations, we bowed out of that process to make sure that they felt like they could form those without any influence from us. And so it's wonderful to see what came across our desks. I was observing so much of the work that took place over the last year, and still it's incredible to see it all aggregated at the end to see how much you guys actually covered, how much ground you covered. I'll leave time for some of my other colleagues who weren't as close to the work, but I have a question. One of your first recommendations is really about how can the city invest resources to make sure that we are seizing the opportunities that are available to us to both preserve and increase our affordable housing stock. From what you've seen from other communities and what you've seen from your guest speakers and all the reading you did, would you say that up to this point, Englewood is missing out on funding or partnership or affordable housing developments due to lack of staffing or funding? Help us understand what current costs are there to our community by not having what you're recommending?
I would say the answer is yes. And it's a few different reasons. One, it's that partnership I mentioned. When you go after, whether it's state funding, federal funding, to make some of these projects happen, especially that kind of private, that public-private partnership, those funders are looking for that partnership. They are looking for that city to be partnered with that developer in what they're doing. And so that's why we've really recommended that housing position to be that entity that can partner, that can build those relationships, can unlock those opportunities. And so I know that, there's opportunities within Englewood. It's saying, here's this opportunity, how do we pair this up with the right person, and how do we go after this together? How do we leverage both of our resources to find a way to maximize this?
That's helpful to understand. And then I have one more question, and then I'll hand it over to my colleagues. As you know, we've been having a conversation for the last couple of years in this community around density. I'm going to bring it up right out at the top. It's challenging to understand, can we densify to create more affordable housing and not lose the things that we love the most about our community? Can we allow other people to belong here without us feeling like we belong here any less? As you said in your report, you think that we could, in certain zones, increase the areas where we are open to more than 4 units on a certain lot. I believe your presentation said that we have about a quarter of the community right now that's currently zoned for that, and you'd like to see that increased. But I noted that you said certain zones, not necessarily the full city. Is there any color you can add about what zones maybe you guys were discussing? I'm sure there's varying opinions, but why did you say certain zones and maybe not the whole city for multifamily?
I think we specifically wanted to stay away from R1, since that's been such a hot button through Code Next, specifically about re-densifying R1. And so there were conversations specifically around avoiding R1 and looking at the other districts.
I would say that that's something that we left up to you guys, that we didn't get too in the weeds of what should go where. We did evaluate the lots that the city owns that could be potentially developed for affordable housing. And the quick takeaway from that was they're challenging lots to develop. But I don't think we had too many discussions about what we expected where and kind of pigeonholing certain types of product in certain areas, other than what Sherry just mentioned.
I think we were keenly aware of the just ongoing resistance and challenge of the concerns in R1 districts. And also, I think, just to applies to this question, but also your previous question, as you've seen, it takes an all of the above approach. That's what it's clear about. There's no silver bullets. The city investing in staffing and funding, I mean, when you have all of these tools on the table that are changing at different times, resources from the state, from the federal government, locally, it takes investment by the city to coordinate those things, to know what to say yes to know what to say no to. And also, Englewood is unique, and that's what we love about it. And it's going to take investment from the city in people and in money to adapt these solutions to Englewood.
Thank you.
Other members of council, Member Russell.
Thank you, and I thank you to the Housing Affordability Task Force for all the work that you did. I do have a question for all of you. Two of the newest affordable housing developments in Englewood are probably Trails at Lehigh and Traditions. Did you go see any of the apartments, and do you know what those apartments are renting for? Do any of you know that?
No, I don't think we got into specific projects within the city or talked about rents at specific projects or properties.
Okay.
I know the Trails at Lehigh is a LIHTC development, which has a unit mix to keep a varying level of income, or a varying level of household incomes at not spending more than 30% of their income on housing. So I can't remember specific numbers, and I don't remember the specific unit mix of that development, but that's the target.
Okay, I mean, if somebody else wants to weigh in, I don't think it's reality. Here's my take. When I went to the Trails at Lehigh, I was checking for somebody living in Traditions because they're a senior, they're being priced out. They can't afford to live there. They are paying 85% of their income to live at Traditions. The apartments at Trails at Lehigh, the newest, were even more than what they're paying. The more we build, the less affordable. You cannot build new affordable housing. And I think that, I think it was Mr. Whitaker that was talking about things change. They do. I've lived long enough to see that things ebb and flow. Housing prices go up and they go down. When you are in a high inflationary period, it is impossible to find affordable housing. So it is unfortunate. I went through that period in my lifetime. And what do? You rent where you can afford until the market changes, and it will change. So anyway, I just wanted to know if there were some practical things that you had checked into.
I think that is one of the reasons why, when we looked at this, we really wanted to provide the resources to attract a diverse set of affordable housing. So that's, the small scale residential, home ownership, affordable rentals, even the funds to be able to provide rental assistance. We really want to create we put forward recommendations that really provide the tools and the infrastructure to address multiple strategies across that spectrum so that we can try to mitigate it as those issues come up.
Thank you.
And if I could just add respectfully, Member Russell, I mean, we heard from so many organizations that are building new affordable housing across the metro area and across the state. What has been clear is that left to just the market, it doesn't happen. and left to just market forces, we will see some of the things that I think people are really uncomfortable with in other cities. The types of units being built that are driven by the market, the number of luxury and above, market units, even the form and housing type of these enormous, like $850,000 duplexes and triplexes that we see coming down Broadway from Denver. Left to the market, that's what we will see. And then, like I said, contrasting that, we spent a lot of time hearing from a lot of organizations that are making affordable housing work. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the task force for all the work you put in on this. And it was a year-long project, and you had homework even. You had to do research and learn things as you went. So I know it was a tremendous amount of work, and I'm very thankful for it. You mentioned an affordable housing fund, that it should come from a variety of sources. The only source I have heard or seen the potential is the fee in lieu. Do you guys have other ideas for what sources of funds we could use to populate a affordable housing fund with a lot of money?
One that we discussed that we thought could potentially have, viability. Obviously, we discussed things that already exist, taxes that already exist that could be adjusted or redistributed, but there are newer additional, fees that could be added. Something we discussed was potentially a property transfer fee. Something like this exists in the state of Colorado already, but it could be graded, like progressive in such a way as for selling a property that's over a certain value, incurs a certain fee that would go into an affordable housing fund. We discussed a lot of different possible options, and I think that they're listed in the report, but that was one that I wanted to highlight because we didn't bring it up specifically.
Yeah, I believe they're in the report, but some of the other ones were a sales tax, a rental property licensing fee, which definitely had some discussion and some opinions on both sides, real estate transfer tax, property tax, even a commitment from the general fund to kind of match or support those other funding sources.
I'll just piggyback really quickly on the one that we had a lot of discussion on, which was the rental fee. I do think that having landlords in the city register, fee or not, is a benefit so that we know which units are being rented, and that we're keeping our housing supply not only hopefully affordable, but also safe for the people and residents who are renting them. Right now, we don't know how many corporate landlords own a lot of houses that are being rented in the city, so that type of program could help. As somebody who owns a lot of houses within Denver that we rent, we went through the process. We had to do some minor upgrades at a couple of the houses, but the fee is not expensive. It's a couple $100 every few years per unit, and it's something that I think would provide the city with a higher level of units that are being marketed for rent and a better understanding of where rents are, what landlords are doing, and who the landlords in our city are.
Thank you.
We're gonna go to my left, member right, and then member Prank.
Thank you. I appreciate the amount of time that you all put into this. It was thoughtful. I have a few questions. On one of this, it says outlaw new buildings for single-family homes. That statement alone kind of, I have a lot of highlighting throughout my pack, and it's the big one here that was in here. So that's my first question. I would like to know the methodology on why we would outlaw single-family homes. It's on page 21 at the very bottom.
Yeah, so that is shown in there's a section of the report that talks about what we talked about in each meeting. And we ended each meeting with a reflection called I like, I wish, and I wonder. And that was an opportunity for each task force member to write on a sticky note what they liked about that session, what they wish about that session, and what they wonder about that session. So I think what you are referencing is one of the task force members' personal opinions about either what they liked, what they wished, or what they wondered about that particular session, and not a recommendation from this task force.
Yeah, well, I don't know, then I'm confused because the like, I wonder and stuff is in a different part of it. So I don't know.
Member Wright, if
It's-
I may, I think it's what they discussed in the meeting, but didn't ultimately include in the final recommendations, which are at the end of the report.
Okay, because they have questions, brainstorming recommendations, and maybe that's what it is, the brainstorming.
Yeah, the final
Which-
recommendations are pages 37 to 39,
Okay,
or 40, excuse me.
I believe it was just in a brainstorming session. I don't think it's the intent of the task force to outlaw single-family development. I think it was a topic where right now, again, the cost of any house in the city that's going to be bought and scraped will require a large, expensive house to be built for that to make sense. And the conversation was, instead of seeing a lot of the old supply being scraped for these new $1 million houses that are definitely not affordable, what could be done in response to that?
and I guess looking at two sides of that coin, if I'm an individual that bought that property and I wanted to scrape and build something for myself, I should be able to. I see both sides of that.
I think people are still going to buy houses and scrape them and build nice $1 million homes. I think, in my eyes, it would be great to see smaller homes built as well. So again, the cottage zoning and lots being split, and how do we promote smaller lot development that I think would ultimately promote more naturally affordable homes to be built. Ms. Russell, on your comment of nothing being affordable, I mean, the data is there. 50% of renters in the city are burdened by rent. But if you go build a 1,200-foot house instead of a 5,000-foot house, I'd say it has a much better chance of selling for a smaller dollar amount or renting for a smaller dollar amount. Whether that's affordable or not still would obviously depend on that person's income level.
I just want to add too that it was never our recommendation to limit anyone's property rights under any of our final recommendations. That was just a brainstorming idea in one of our conversations.
Okay, perfect. Then also, you said that you spoke to multiple cities. Were these cities the size of Englewood? Because Denver, Aurora, other cities that are much bigger have the capabilities to do compared to Englewood, there's a big difference. So were you speaking to cities that are landlocked like we are and, 35,000 population?
I think Englewood's very unique in its population and density and location. We spoke with Denver and Longmont, but also these are cities that have implemented policies and not everybody has. And so we were just looking at them as an example. I don't know how comparative by population they are, but definitely Longmont's situation is different than Englewood's because the fee in lieu can be used for future land banking where they could build affordably later, and we don't necessarily have that luxury. So for us, we would want developers to build rather than contribute to a fund because any new development is impactful in our city.
Okay, and then I guess, were there discussions on areas of where building other than knocking down? I'm trying to picture,
No.
okay, where there would be
We'll
availability.
leave that up to you guys. Yeah.
Okay.
We looked at the city-owned lots again, and the city has 5 or 6 different areas that could be developed, and what we learned was that they're challenging developments that are close to flood zones or had environmental issues or were more or less in maybe a less desirable kind of tucked in area by like the golf course. I know there's a couple lots. And, you know, I think something that's important for all of us is how affordable housing is integrated and a meaningful part of the city and not necessarily pigeonholed to a specific area of the city.
So, I don't know, this is unique.
It would
Probably-
be infill, to answer your question, is potentially what we.
So we partner with other cities on a lot of stuff. Were there discussions on partnerships with our you know,
That's what that
tri-city
role would
partners?
do.
Okay,
Yeah, there was in one of the recommendations about taking a regional approach and what our neighbors are doing and what resources are available and things like that.
okay, yes, because we have, you know, I saw the picture of Bonsai, that's real close to my house, and it's on the verge of opening if not taking applications, so it just,
They're almost fully leased at Bonsai, actually.
and I
Yeah.
believe that, they were, as soon as they broke ground, people were probably.
And on your question of touring, we didn't tour the Traditions or the Lehigh, but we did tour Bonsai, which is a beautiful new affordable development.
So one more question, then I'll pass it on. You mentioned that you have a couple rentals where it costs a couple $100 a year in Denver, or a couple years. So if you have more than that or a multi-unit complex, we know several people that, have units in Denver, and they have said because of the cost, it is passed down to their renters. They couldn't do it any other way. And I think that is something that has to be discussed, if that fee is going to be done. We have spoken to numerous people that own properties, and if it's a multi-unit property, those companies are not going to foot that bill. They're going to pass it to their renters.
So I'd answer it two ways. I own multi-unit properties in Denver as well, and we had to register them as well. And the cost per unit, in my opinion, is not prohibitive. It's more like, I want to say $50 per unit every couple of years. So, you know, for a 10-unit building, for me to spend $500 one time every couple of years, if I'm passing that down to a renter, you're talking about $10 a month. Now, that's material, and I don't think the goal is to pass that down. I think the second thing that we talked about as a group was it still needs to be market, right? If, let's just say the fee was $50,000 and I have to pass down, you know, an extra $1,000 per month to a unit, well, nobody's going to rent that unit necessarily. And so I don't think a landlord taking the obligation of a rental licensing fee in a way of materially impacting what a tenant's rent is on the other end is true, at least in Denver, and at least from my experience.
Okay, yeah, well, then perhaps it's different experiences for different people. I don't know. So, okay, thank you.
Member Prang?
Thank you. Thank you all for being here and all of the hard work that you've put into this and for representing a wide array of voices to this conversation. First of all, I want to thank you for the stories that you shared. I think that were we to adopt these recommendations and continue to move this work forward, what you did at the beginning and throughout, coming up and sharing what your experience has been through the sharing of the stories was really powerful. And I related to it, both on a renter's level and now a homeowner's level. I faced a lot of similar feelings and sentiments to become a homeowner in Englewood. So kudos for that piece of the presentation. I think that it helps people hear when those of us who live here and have either rented, I think especially if you've both rented and own, you know, to help others understand what that experience feels like. I have just a couple of questions. Thank you for digging into the renter licensing fees, because I had questions around that, but I think you answered them. I'm wondering if one of you would be willing to speak a little bit more to some detail around your conversations on parking. Mr. Martinez, I'm sure as you remember in some of the conversations that we sat together on planning and zoning, parking is a pretty hot topic in Englewood and a challenge for a lot of people. So how did that conversation flow, and how did you come to the point where that remained as a possible solution or an incentive to developers in your recommendations and analysis?
So parking is where the friction really happens, I think, with a lot of this work. It's how people feel it. It's how people, experience the challenges of more density. I have my own views on this. We live in a very car-centric society. Our built environment is built around cars. I don't know of any other thing where I can be guaranteed a safe, protected place for my own personal property that's not on my property. So I just have this, we have to evolve past this to face a lot of the challenges in our world. The environment, the limited amount of space we have, the highest and best use of the land that we have in our city. We're committing an awful lot of it for cars. So that's a real challenge because the entire system is set up to support that, and that the way that our cities are designed are set up to support that. And it's also one of the most frustrating things when you can't find a parking spot in front of your house. So it is a conundrum, it is a challenge. I think it's going to take incremental steps, incremental measures to having a more pedestrian-friendly, bike-friendly society that we live in, or community that we live in. There's a lot of other initiatives throughout the city that are focused on these things, and I don't think that housing should be excluded from that. I mean, it takes all of the above. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in more specifically.
I mean, I have, my opinion is, we have been so concerned about parking. We've been so concerned about where we put our cars that now we have more people living in cars. So if that's the future we want to go to, then yeah, let's figure out where we can park every car everywhere. But that's not going to help the situation. We need homes, not parking lots. We need housing, not parking spaces.
Well, my personal opinion, I think it's tempting to get kind of flippant about parking spaces a little bit, because not everybody in Englewood is an able-bodied person in their 30s. There's plenty of older people here, and like it or not, we live in a car dependent society. I don't like it, but it's the reality we're in, and I do think if we eliminate too many, if we get too dismissive of parking, we can make life really hard for old people, disabled people, people who have to, haul little kids in and out of their house every day, or bring groceries in with trying to deal with little kids and stuff like that. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the variety of perspectives on that. I know that will be an ongoing piece of the conversation. My other question is, so I'm really intrigued by the property tax relief piece of this, and does anyone have information on how that works? I mean, so there's a piece around property taxes that involves the county, correct? So is that, do you know, is that something where like cities would have to have some sort of agreement with the county? Would it just impact like our piece of the puzzle or funding our property taxes? And does anyone have a sense of whether Arapahoe County has considered that as a solution for affordable housing?
I don't believe the property tax relief was in the final recommendation. I think that was also in one of our discussions and a brainstorming of an idea. I see where I just searched my document on page 27 of the PDF, or 22 of the report. Property tax relief for land placed in a land trust is the context of that recommendation. I think one of the really interesting groups that we heard speak was Elevation Land Trust, who, and I might be wrong on this, but I don't think owns a lot of houses within Englewood or worked with people to buy houses in Englewood. But the land trust model is a really interesting one, where if they can buy a house, put a 99-year restriction on it, sell it then affordably to a buyer, and I guess maybe then potentially have some property tax relief, I think it could make sense for the land trust, the property owner, maybe less for Arapahoe County and the city of Englewood to collect funds, but I don't think it was like a blanket statement on property tax relief.
Okay.
And to add to that, the way the land trust model works in property tax relief is they own the land, the person owns the improvement on the land. And so the land trust pays the property taxes on the land, and then the homeowner pays the property taxes on the property. And so they're split out, and it makes it a little bit more affordable in that manner.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. And let me see if I had one more question. On the tenant equity piece, what is the incentive for rental owners to want to do that?
I think it's more of a requirement that they do it for the incentive of the renter and just a general contribution to the affordable housing cause. I know the Sun Valley has a new development that has a tenant equity vehicle. It's a new concept that that one property has. I don't know how widespread it is. I've just heard of it in that specific instance, but it's more of an end result, not an incentive for the developer.
Yeah, I think what I'm getting at more is, I'm thinking more in terms of like single-family home, smaller home. This home's been in our family for generations and generations, and we're holding on to it and continuing to rent it. Is that,
I think it's
is it
more of
not
a
applicable?
multifamily concept.
Okay, that's what I wanted. Some of the recommendation, I just want to make sure that we're striking that right balance of not, like, we want to maintain that small housing stock that we have, if you will. And I don't want to create a situation where we're disincentivizing families who might end up renting, like, eventually maybe I'll rent my home. And so, you know, I want to make sure that we're kind of protecting that piece of the housing stock and not pushing families away to just say, forget it, I'm just gonna sell and let someone develop it, and then suddenly we do have a fourplex there where maybe someone didn't want that in their neighborhood. So as much as we can, making sure that we're honoring that piece of the puzzle, but also looking creatively at those potential funding sources for the multifamily units. Thank you.
I think on that, you know, we put the recommendation forward as really a tool to empower renters, to also provide them the opportunity to maybe move within that continuum of housing. You know, if they are creating some equity as they're renting that, over time, they're gonna build some equity in there that they can take and maybe go put a down payment on a house. So it gives them that ability to maybe move within that continuum instead of feeling like they are spending, you know, 40%, 50% of their income on housing, and there's no opportunity for them to grow within that continuum. And I think we left it up to you all to determine where that is applied.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank you so much. Do you mind if I ask a couple questions before I pass it up to the rest of the council members? So my first question should be an easy one. Advisory board, we haven't talked too much about that, but what do you foresee the makeup of that board looking like? Is it community members? Is it a mix of staff and I guess kind of like the Affordable Housing Task Force? So what's your thoughts on that?
I think we looked at it similar to like a planning and zoning oversight board. Okay. Community members that basically this hired position would report to. Sophie, too, because you recommended.
Yeah, I think that captures it well. We really envisioned it similar to, with some of the same spirit that we approached the Affordable Housing Task Force with diverse opinions, And we were so graciously supported by staff throughout. I would imagine that any new board would need the same type of support. Yeah. But
Yeah, I'd see it as a liaison's a good word, but as a resource for council and that position to have a sounding board of the community and members, so.
All right. So also, but not only that, but just understanding what the goals are of council or goals of the council, how the metrics are tracking, what changes that we need to make based off of what is and what isn't working kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Inclusionary zoning was mentioned within the document, but there was no percentage given. I just saw just more than little tins 5%. Was there a number thrown out by the members of the board in terms of what that may look like and, where we would, obviously city center redevelopment is something that we're going to be looking closely at here over the next few months. So there's a second part to that question as well. We're looking at 30 to 80% AMI is my assumption based off of the inclusionary zoning. 80 to 120 is also something that's in the back of my mind, but I think that that's probably easier to build than the 30 to 80%. I think we have to be more intentional about affordable housing to get built in the city. So when you guys looked at inclusionary zoning, what percentage, and am I right in the AMIs that I'm kind of thinking about?
We had a lot of discussion about this and a lot of wordsmithing about not pigeonholing our recommendation into something that would be prohibitive for development. The number that was tossed around was 25% at one point. But knowing construction costs, the development environment, we want a staff person and the resources that we're also asking the city to invest in to really do a deep dive into examining what's feasible, what's going to have the best outcomes, what's going to be encourage the right kind of development. So that's why we stopped short of a specific number. I think the language was meaningful, significant or meaningful in terms of if somebody's building market rate for profit, making a profit off of developing housing in the city, they should also be providing a meaningful amount of affordable housing along with it.
I also think that depending on a single house development or 4 units or 200 units, that answer could likely change.
Right.
As well as locations within the city.
I just wanted to add too that if the goal is 30% of AMI, then it just requires a bigger subsidy. So it requires those relationships, it requires that person that's finding those funds to make that property possible. That's how you do it.
I guess to kind of jump on that, were there numbers discussed in terms of how big the affordable housing fund should be? When speaking with other cities or with the consultants, was there a number that okay, I did, no?
No, we didn't. And to your earlier question about AMI ranges, we were primarily focused on 30 to 80 as the traditional kind of band of quote-unquote affordable housing, but also, and I think it is in the recommendations, or at least in the guiding principles, that we know that the entire continuum of housing needs support, including the workforce, what you would call the 80 to 120, and also the permanent supportive and transitional as well, in that there needs to be focus across that entire spectrum.
Thank you. Member Noonan-Camp.
I had an AMI-related question as well, so we'll see if you have any other thoughts. And it's going all the way back to Member Russell's point about traditions, and she brings up an interesting challenge that we've dealt with here in Englewood. Traditions is an affordable housing development that's based on 60% AMI. And so if someone comes in, they say, yes, I can pay 60% AMI, that fits with a percentage of my income. As we know, as I'm sure you learned, AMI changes as the demographics of the metro changes, as our county changes. What was 60% AMI was maybe a much lower numeric number. It's still 60% AMI 5 years later, but it's a much higher numeric number, which means you have a much higher rent. It's still 60% AMI, but it's a much larger share of your personal income. And so while it's still an affordable unit, it doesn't feel as affordable as it once was. And that's the challenge of AMI, is it's constantly changing. Did you explore anything around the functionality of AMI as something that we use to measure affordable housing? Or do you have any thoughts, did you hear from any of your speakers, another way to think about how to avoid some of the challenges that Member Russell witnessed at Traditions?
We did talk about having the hired person examine other forms of AMI, whether Englewood is separate from Arapahoe County, likely is. But the challenge becomes state and federal funding related to AMI. When you start adjusting AMI, then you start to skew your ability to receive funds based on the federal number. So we excluded that from our recommendations.
Would you say that if we had our own housing assistance fund, that perhaps if someone came in at 60% AMI and that is no longer a reasonable share of their income, that's where maybe the assistance fund could come in and fill some of those gaps? Is that consistent with some of the ways you guys are thinking about this?
Sure. I mean, there's obviously been some significant wage growth as well over the last 5 or 10 years. We're obviously been in a hyperinflationary type of environment the last couple of years. I think back to kind of Ms. Russell's comment that she made earlier, there's a lot of people who are on fixed incomes that maybe isn't changing in retirement, yet the AMIs are changing as every year prices go up. I think that would be potentially a great way to use a fund to fill a gap like that for those people.
That's helpful. Oh, go ahead, please.
If I could add, I think that's a great example of why that advisory board is so necessary, because they can take those issues, they can learn those issues and say, okay, within our affordable housing fund, how do we want to deploy this? Do we want to use it to bridge that difference between what was affordable and what is now not affordable? Or do we want to invest it in other things? You know, I think we talked a lot about home ownership and the stability that home ownership creates. When you buy a home, you are entering into most typically a 30-year fixed mortgage. Now there's some variables in property taxes and insurance, but that gives you that stability, that predictability of what you are paying year after year. And so I think that advisory board can really create some priority about how that fund is allocated.
That's super helpful, thank you. Mayor, I have a question for staff. Is that appropriate at this time?
Yeah,
or should
sure.
we wait? Okay. Dr. Power, I don't know if you'd like to take this, but I'm curious the staff perspective on these recommendations. Which of these feel like something that maybe we could act on with our existing staff? Which do you think maybe we would need more support or more financial investment? And do you have any initial thoughts on the funding mechanisms?
Oh, what was the last part?
The funding mechanisms. Any staff ideas?
Well, I think one of the things that we're really cognizant of that we have direct control over is the pace of our development process. So the recommendations around that are something that we would definitely want to take a look at. I would posit that Englewood has a pretty streamlined process now, but we could always improve. On the resources standpoint, none of us in our department have that deep dive experience in affordable housing. So I think the discussion around the future resource issue around how this work would get done would definitely be a discussion that we would like to have with you, because we don't have that resource right now in terms of a staff member who is plug and play and ready to go for that. As far as the funding goes, again, I think it's reflective of the task force's recommendation around the variety of different resources that you could bring to the table. I think one of the things I think I may have shared with you in the past around our recent experience with Proposition 123, which is how complex it is, and more importantly, how competitive it is. I mean, it is almost virtually impossible to access those funds because the demand statewide is far exceeding any funds that are available on a yearly basis. So having the ability to really get in the game and to do a lot of exploration of the creativity aspects of what the task force talked about is, I think, something that we would look to work with you going forward to make sure we're putting our best foot forward. And the last thing I would say, I think it came up toward the beginning of the conversation, which is the regional aspect of the challenge. I think there's the challenge of every city approaching it kind of on their own. And are we leaving resources on the table that we could pool funds, we could find sites that could serve the folks who need that type of housing throughout the region versus every city kind of being in it for themselves, because I do think that might not be the best resource allocation process that we would look at. So again, down the road, I think that's also something that would be interesting to look at, whether or not our regional partners that you've established in other areas of work might be open to this type of suggestion too.
Mayor, if I could go ahead, City Manager.
Thank you. If I could just add to what Brad mentioned, as we kind of saw the recommendations forming and realizing everything takes resources, right? Everything that's recommended has a resource connection to that. We did start talking with a little bit of specificity in terms of dollar amounts to your specific question. One of the revenue sources that we see on the near horizon is from McClellan Reservoir. As you know, we get over $500,000 a year from long-term leases that we have on the property owned at McClellan Reservoir. We have really just a couple of remaining lots out there that we do have letters of intent from a housing developer on. And so that is expected to generate around $600,000 a year. If council, said we want to implement these recommendations, we would probably be looking at that because we wouldn't have to take from an existing budget. It's new revenue that's not currently programmed, and I'll look back at my finance director to see if his hair's on fire. But really, that is something that we've talked about that could be, a good connection because it's a housing revenue source that's going to affordable housing in our community, and we think that could be a source if council chooses to move forward with any or all of the recommendations.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I just had a comment. I was going to ask about the inclusionary zoning idea, and because I had seen the number 25% in there. You kind of answered my question, but I did want to just kind of give a little feedback on that. I do. When we did on our, we were working on Code Next, we talked about doing fourplexes, allowing for fourplexes on corner lots as long as 25% of them were, one out of the 4 units were affordable, and it just did not pencil, especially at the 80% AMI or lower level. It was the consultant ended up saying you got to do 100% AMI, which now we're getting into middle income, not so affordable. So that's the 25% strikes me as very high and probably a development killer. I don't think anybody would come to Englewood to build apartments if there was a 25% inclusionary ordinance. They would just go somewhere where it's 5 or 0. So that's the one thing I want to be really cognizant of as we're doing this, is that the things we're doing to try to generate new affordable housing don't kill housing altogether and kind of have that backfire effect. So thanks for all the work on that, and that'll certainly be a point of conversation in the future, I'm sure.
I'll just add, I know that when we talked about percentage of units for an IHO, I think there was a consensus that like Littleton's 5% was pretty toothless and felt almost like a token amount of affordable units. I do think that that gap of what you're talking about with the feasibility could be filled by some of these funding sources we were talking about and what Sean was just talking about with the McClellan Reservoir leases. And as I recall, the root policy analysis said that the whole 80% AMI, 25% of units was feasible like only for nonprofit developers. And just speaking for myself, I think I think if we can get those nonprofit developers in, I think that's great. And I do think a lot of the opposition to big developments and stuff, I think a good portion of it is not so much about not wanting to look at big things. I think a lot of it is about a concern that that we don't, what you don't want is to be replacing a bunch of $500,000 or less bungalows with $1.5 million units, and that I think that can be ameliorated with a really robust percentage, like if we were to do an IHO.
Thank you for that, Jake.
All right, any further questions or comments? Go ahead.
I was just going to say that
We turned you off.
we recommend this person to come into this role also to look at that percentage and figure out what is feasible, and maybe it is an economies of scale, so maybe it's a higher number of units requires that 25%, whatever that looks like. I just think we were trying to be idealistic in that number.
Sure, very good, thank you.
Anything else from members of council? Well, Affordable Housing Task Force, thank you very much again for all the work that you put into this, all the recommendations. It got my brain spinning. I know that we're not going to be able to do everything that's within this document, but there's a lot of ideas in here that I do like. I like the coordinator aspect. I like the board, although we'd probably have to kind of piggyback or kind of fine tune that a little bit. I need to understand that a little bit better. But I think there's a lot that we can be doing more of within the city. Actually, there was one thing that I forgot to mention. Did you guys talk about private activity bonds by any chance during your conversations? Did those come up? Okay. I was kind of curious about that aspect of it, but I think there's a lot of levers that we can be pulling as well in terms of just moving forward with the additional affordable housing projects within the city. I know that the Englewood Housing Authority was looking at the private activity bonds as well. We'll probably be discussing that over the next year or so. But I really appreciate all the work that you put into this. We're going to continue talking about this, especially this Saturday during our retreat. So there's more to come, and looking for funding mechanisms as well for this housing fund per se. So again, thank you very much for all the work that you guys put into this. I don't think that there's anything else from members of council, but we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll meet back again at 7 o'clock, and then we'll start off the regular meeting. Thank you, everyone. All right, everyone, I call this meeting to order. If you're able to do so, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. City Clerk, if you could please take roll call.
Yes, good evening. Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Present.
Member Nunnenkamp,
Present?
Member Prang,
Present.
Member Russell,
Present.
Member Ward,
Present.
Member Wright,
Here.
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
All 7 present.
Thank you. Moving on to minutes from the regular city council meeting of January 6th. Any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the January 6th meeting?
I move to approve the January 6th minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp,
Aye.
Member Prang,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7-8.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6, recognition. The city would like to recognize Englewood's Public Works and Finance team, as well as the Arapahoe County Office of Emergency Management for successfully obtaining FEMA reimbursement for the storm damages that occurred in June 2023. The city of Englewood and Arapahoe County endured through a major weather event on June 22nd, 2023. Damage from the weather event resulted in a presidential declaration of Arapahoe County as a disaster zone, opening the opportunity for reimbursements for repairs. Within the city of Englewood, significant damage occurred within Rotolo Park as well as on Oxford Avenue. Since completion of the repairs, City of Englewood staff and Arapahoe County staff have been working diligently with FEMA and the state of Colorado for reimbursement of city funds spent on the repairs. Through the process and continued dedication of staff, reimbursement for 87.5% of the funds spent have been received, which is the maximum available. So this includes $811,393 received from Oxford Avenue repairs and $41,627 for the Rotolo Park repairs for a total of $853,020. Staff involved in the repair oversight and reimbursement include Kevin Ingles, our Director of Finance, Victor Rochelle, Director of Public Works, Timothy Host, the Deputy Director of Public Works, Trudy Peepgrass, the Procurement and Contracts Manager, Shonda Margot, the Traffic Operations Supervisor, Michael Wilson, Inspector Supervisor, Les Chapman, the Construction Inspector, Nate Fogg with the Arapahoe County Director of Office of Emergency Management, as well as Ashley Capel, Arapahoe County Deputy Director of Office of Emergency Management. So we just want to thank you for your dedication to the city and all the work that went into this process. Victor, Kevin, anything that you want to state, or just a quick picture with everyone from your team? We'll just take a quick picture, so we got certificates for you all. So thank you so much for all the work that you put into this. You remember? No? Yeah. All right, everyone, we're moving on to agenda item 7. This is resolution appointing members to the various boards, commissions, and committees. We had 2 nights of interviews last week. We had, 42 people apply, and we interviewed. We were able to align people with, as best as possible, within the committees and boards that they requested. I guess just one point, there is a second Let's see here. Trying to think of where my sheet is here. So we do have a second alternate available within sustainability that we weren't able to fill. I'm not sure if anybody had any suggestions there. I'm fine leaving it blank unless someone else states, but Member Russell, any comments?
The comments that I have is I would like to pull out the CEAC and the Water and Sewer Board appointments and discuss those separately, please.
Okay. So CEAC and Water and Sewer?
Yes.
All right. All right, so anybody want to second that motion?
I will second it.
Thank you, Member Wright. All right, any comments? All right, seeing none, we're voting on the appointments as is, just excluding CEAC and the Water and Sewer Board.
Point of order, are we voting to remove those from the list before we vote, or that was?
The way that I understand, yeah, so the motion is to amend the resolution to exclude the Water and Sewer Board as well as the CEAC appointments, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
So then we'll vote separately to approve everything but those two?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
The vote right now is to vote on everything outside of those two. Does that make sense?
Okay, that's fine too.
Okay.
If that's what we understand it to be. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Member Russell, do you want to bring up the CEAC?
Yes, I think there was a total misunderstanding. I think it was just a perfect storm. It was no one's fault. The member that did not apply for a reappointment had been promoted from alternate to the regular member. I think it was October. It could have been September. So they were there at that meeting, which was their first full-time appointment. If it was September, then they were there for 2. Then the November meeting, she was absent because there was a family emergency. However, the email did go out. I called her and spoke with her. She didn't read the email because she didn't recognize the name on it. We always call officer or code enforcement officer Futuro, we call him AJ in the meeting, and it said Alexander Futuro, and she didn't notice it. He did speak, AJ spoke with the chair before the November meeting, and he would have asked her, but then she had a family emergency and did not come to the meeting in November. And then by the next time she came, there was no December meeting, that was canceled. So when she came to the meeting last week, she was told that she wouldn't be on the board any longer. And I just would like us to reconsider putting her in the regular meeting, because she just had become a regular member. It wasn't like, and I think that was the misunderstanding on her part. Nobody knew that seat was open. So I would like to do that if council is agreeable to that.
Member Russell, thank you very much for the background on that. Definitely seems like a very tough situation, just misunderstanding as well as, yeah, just got elevated to the role. And then a month or two later having to state that they wanted to reapply for the role. So thank you for that, Member Russell. Any comments from members of council? Go ahead, Member Ward.
I have no objection. It's this council's tradition to reappoint members who are already sitting on the board without an interview. So the fact that we missed an interview doesn't weigh in on this. In my case, sounds like there was a little bit of administrative confusion. I don't have any objection to making this change.
Thank you, Member Ward, Member Noonan, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
I think I just have a clarifying question. I was trying to follow all of the movement. Typically, if was this person who was just reappointed, was their term already expiring? How did they get kicked off the board if they were just appointed?
Basically, the person that she was the alternate. And so the person who she took their seat, who was no longer on the board, his seat was up for reappointment, and she didn't know that. I mean, actually, I don't know that anybody on the committee did until AJ got the email from probably Sarah Harkness.
And so we were asking her to indicate, does she want to continue on the new term? Okay, that's what I missed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm supportive of making that change. The only question I have is, she would go in the position that it looks like we were going to put Joel Moore in. Do we have an alternate place to put him, or we just bump him and ask him to reapply?
Didn't we put Joel Moore as the alternate?
We did, so I guess
So it'd be Rick Summerson? What is that?
So, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem, sorry.
Is Rick Summerson moving from alternate to regular?
So the way that I'm understanding it, and chime in, Member Russell, if you like, but my understanding is that this person would assume the regular member, Rick Summerson, would move down to alternate, and then we would have to find a place for Joel.
That would be correct, because she actually was in the regular position, not the alternate.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Go ahead, Member Wright, sorry, I was looking right, go ahead.
is there still a position? I have my regular one in sustainability.
Yeah.
Could we put Mr. Summers,
That would
Joel into sustainability?
That could work. There is an open spot as an alternate within sustainability. So just move the alternate from CEAC to sustainability. They meet on different nights, but hopefully that would work. We didn't ask that question, but hopefully that would work, but that's an option. Thank you, Member Wright. I'm not hearing much disagreement on this. So Member Russell, do you want to, we haven't talked about Water and Sewer Board, but do you want to make the motion to amend the CEAC to, I don't have her name, so.
Okay, I would like to amend the CEAC board to put Linda Hart in the regular seat and who else? Rick Summerson in the alternate seat.
Thank you, I have the only sheet, so, thank you, Member Russell. So yeah, so this, okay, can I get a second? Sorry.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? All right, can we please vote on the CEAC positions, making Linda Hart the regular member and Rick Summerson the alternate?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Ninenkamp.
Aye.
Member Pring. Aye. Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Member Russell, you wanted to speak about Water and Sewer Board.
Yes, I would like to speak about Water and Sewer Board. I know it was getting late, and the other night when we were talking about appointments, and I would really like to put Dr. Nonis into the Water and Sewer Board seat. After listening to the interviews, Dr. Nonis is not necessarily my personal friend. I knew him because of a professional relationship. He was a specialist, and he retired a couple of years ago. And whenever a medical doctor is willing to take time out of their schedule, and he is the only candidate that brought up the things that the Water and Sewer Board has really been looking at. It's about the quality of the water. He talked about PFAS, he talked about other things in the water. I think that he would bring to the Water and Sewer Board a piece of the puzzle that we do not have. And I would like us to consider Dr. Nonis. I do want to say something about Dr. Nonis. Dr. Nonis saved my life back in 2014. I had an anaphylactic reaction to a medication, and if it was not for Dr. Nonis, I probably would not be here today. And that's just gives credit to him about how he thinks outside of the box and looks for solutions for problems. And I think that he would be a great addition to the Water and Sewer Board. So I'd appreciate your consideration of him.
Member
Thank you.
Russell, yeah, thank you very much, Member Russell. Any questions regarding this from members of council? Go ahead, Member Wright.
I don't have questions, but I would like to give a little feedback. I did go and watch the boards and commission interviews. And if the only feedback that I'm gonna give, it does give me a little pause because I did watch and I did make some notes about Dr. Nonis. And some of the things that I did make is the PFAS. Another one is he's not a government employee. I do recall another council member said at one point that we have a lot of government people applying. He understands the health of water. That is one thing that I wrote down that he says, and I think that's very important for this board. And he also said that he said, how will this benefit you? And he said, I will use my medical background to help the community at large. And that resonated with me. So I really do support this. And I would like to see him on this committee. I'm trying to see how long it is. It's for a 2-year term.
No, 6 years.
Is it 6 years?
The alternate looks to be for 2 years.
Oh, the 2 years. So I think that it's something, like I said, wasn't able to be part of the discussion, but I think that this here is important to me, and I think that we should really consider it. I have a concern, a lot of people that we are, placing, do work for other government entities, and I would like to see somebody placed that does have a medical background that I do believe would be beneficial to the city that has that background. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Wright. I think probably maybe best to just start with the motion and then just, yeah, let's just start with, Member Russell, do you want to make that motion?
Yes, I would like to move that we put Dr. Nicholas Nonis into the alternate position on the Water and Sewer Board.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Wright. Any further comments? I'll chime in here. I'm going to be opposing Dr. Nonis's to the alternate member role. Nothing against Dr. Nonis. I think we're just making some very tough decisions regarding all the applicants within the Water and Sewer Board. There were numerous people there that I really enjoyed, and unfortunately, it was just a numbers game this time around. Usually, we're able to place just about everyone on a board, but this time around, we had 41 or 42 applicants, and we just didn't have as many positions available. I really enjoyed the interview with Dr. Nonis. I could probably listen to him for another 30 minutes. But unfortunately, I'm just gonna stick with the current alignment of Alexa Kelly as the alternate and John Moore as the regular, but I will be voting against this measure. Anyone else? All right, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Nay.
Member Neunenkamp.
Nay.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Nay.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Nay.
Let the record show 3 ayes and 4 nays.
Thank you, City Clerk. So going back to the Water and Sewer Board, can I get a motion to approve the regular member of John Moore and alternate member Alexa Kelly?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Neunenkamp. Could I get a second?
Second.
All right. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Neunenkamp.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Nay.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Nay.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes and 2 nays.
All right, everyone, can we go back to Sustainability Committee and make a motion to approve Joel Moore as the alternate member within the Sustainability.
I move to appoint Joel Moore as the alternate member to Sustainability Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
I would like to second that, but can we make it on the condition of him wanting to serve since we have not checked with him? Pending his availability and interest?
Yes, can we make that
Yes,
friendly amendment?
conditionally.
Yeah, there we are.
Seconded.
Thank you very much, Member Noonan-Camp and Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
All right, thank you very much, everyone, for that discussion. Moving on to recognition of public comment. There's an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask any questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue. And please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. Englewood residents must provide their address or cross street. Non-Englewood residents must provide the name of their city. If you have addressed council in the last 90 days, you will be moved to the bottom of the list. Written materials may be submitted to the city clerk in advance at the meeting. Audio-visual materials must be submitted to the city clerk by 5 p.m. on the Thursday prior to the meeting, and public comment will be limited to 90 minutes total. We have 4 speakers here tonight. We're going to be speaking. We're going to be asking the speakers that haven't been here over the last 90 days to come up first. So that would make Allison Badan the first speaker. Allison. Hello, Allison. There's no need for you to give your name or your cross street since you already wrote it on the form. So when you're ready to speak, you have your 3 minutes. Actually, you want to hit the mic? Should be like a star or something.
Yes.
There you go.
All right. Hello, I live next door to Movement 5280 and serve on the Good Neighbor Committee. I have worked hard to improve communication and maintain a positive relationship with their staff. Despite my efforts, however, I have significant concerns about 5280 and safety, primarily due to being misled, huge delays in action, and flat out being ignored. This has led to a loss of faith in the city's current approach, and I am here today to request a new course of action. Over the past year, my neighbors and I were repeatedly assured that 5280 had security cameras as stated in the Good Neighbor Agreement Section 3.I. However, at the January 16th Good Neighbor Committee meeting, the executive director of 5280 admitted that outside cameras to cover areas where most activity occurs were non-existent and not in their budget. And currently, there are only cameras inside the building. Many surrounding homes in the area have basic outdoor security systems. Why should a business serving a vulnerable population not be held to the same standard? Additionally, simple tasks like posting building schedule signs took months and are still not consistent with the activity that we see on a daily basis. Not to mention the no trespassing signs are still missing. Even with signs in place, I feel like they are ineffective as 5280 does not seem to enforce any policies about when patrons are allowed on site. I regularly witness patrons loitering, using drugs, shouting profanities, car and tent camping, urinating and defecating outside my home, and engaging in other disruptive behavior, all without any consequences. On one occasion, a woman openly used drugs on their front steps, and 5280 refused to trespass her or intervene. There have also been 2 break-ins in the past 4 months, resulting in a large police presence waking me up in the middle of the night and causing concern for my safety. The recent addition of emergency overnight services, which, by the way, was a direct violation of the Good Neighbor Agreement and violates the whole purpose of it, that service has raised concerns that the disruptive behaviors we already witnessed will worsen. Our primary concern is the need for 5280 to significantly improve safety protocols, particularly if they intend to remain in a residential area. If their location were not so close to homes, schools, and businesses, these issues might be more manageable, but they are in a community where people live, work, and raise families. I strongly urge the council to consider relocating 5280 to an area better suited for their services, such as near the new overnight shelter Bridge House, which is actually more accessible to public transportation and the Tri-Cities. Finally, I will end by asking you.
Sorry, Allison, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much for speaking tonight. Any questions? Member Wright, go ahead.
Yes. You said something about overnight services. Can you explain to me what you mean?
Yeah, in October, they were, or I guess starting in August, they were applied to be a emergency overnight shelter connected to Hot Force. And so in October, they started providing those services.
Okay, so every night or only in extreme weather conditions?
Yeah, so it is 32 degrees and snowing or 20 degrees and dry. So it happens, through these months, it's been pretty frequent. In the past week, it's been every single night.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Member Ward.
So you served on the Good Neighbor Committee. What is prescribed in the Good Neighbor Agreement as a resolution for the issues that you're expressing to us tonight?
Well, and that's where my concern is because so many things in the Good Neighbor Agreement are being said that they're doing already, such as the cameras. They're having somebody that walks their parking lot for safety every night and stuff, and they're cleaning up stuff. There's been a broken bottle of glass in their parking lot for months now. So it's just none of it aligns with what we're doing or what we're being told that they're doing. So that's where my concern really is coming from and where I feel like my efforts to be on this committee and to try and improve are, at a loss at the moment.
Right, I understand that. I would be remiss if I didn't repeat the question because I don't know that I actually heard an answer to the question. Is there a process prescribed in the Good Neighbor Agreement for resolving these issues through the Good Neighbor Agreement itself?
I mean, just continuing to meet, but they are not held to anything, no process to be held liable for meeting any of the stuff that we speak about in the Good Neighbor Agreement or in the committee meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry.
Any further questions? Allison, thank you very much for your time tonight. Up next is Kristen Vitale, also an Englewood resident. Hello, Kristen, when you're ready to speak, just your 3 minutes will begin.
Okay, press it. Okay, I can just begin. So, like Allie, our primary concern tonight is safety. I speak on behalf of several neighbors and community members regarding the Movement 5280 business that recently moved into our neighborhood without prior notice or oversight. Many of us, myself included, work with individuals who could be clients of 5280. I personally work in local schools and in neighborhood hospitals. So I think it's imperative for everybody to recognize that there's a growing concern about inconsistencies in service delivery and a lack of appropriate action. And these issues have led to a sense of unease in our community. Movement 5280 has been left, there are actually 4 families that we're really connected to that we're trying to work with 5280 that have been left with no choice but to leave the neighborhood. And a recent report shows that 11 homes within a 1-block radius of the business have been sold in the last year. In addition, the crime rate has been skyrocketing, which is no coincidence. And that looks like from the state records going from 88 drug offenses to 233. Some examples of these inconsistencies and a lack of appropriate action start with the Good Neighbor Agreement. In this document, 5280 has promised good faith efforts to ensure and support a strong and positive quality of life within the neighborhood, that staff will walk the property multiple times a day during hours they're open, identifying people who are not there for services and ask them to leave the property. And 5280 leadership staff members have remote access to security cameras and will report trespassing to the EPD as soon as individuals are seen trespassing. However, we were recently informed that a camera that was claimed to be in place in the springtime is non-existent due to financial constraints, which raises concerns about inadequate security. There's a lack of monitoring at the site, with trash, broken glass, and needles often left unattended for extended periods, creating hazards for neighbors. There are also reports that they are willing to enforce trespassing or address violations such as open drug use, despite the rules outlined in the document. Additionally, they frequently fail to respond to calls, forcing us to contact non-emergency police services, often for assistance. This document also states that any changes would be communicated to the neighborhood prior to implementation. Despite this, the overnight shelter was introduced in October without public notice, even though the fire department was reportedly involved in August preparations. The police department was unaware of the shelter's operation when it began. This lack of communication has led to unintended consequences, including increased foot traffic, public disturbances such as defecation, urination, loitering, more of that, substance use, verbal altercations, arrests, and a rise in emergency service calls, which we see all the time. The overnight shelter has resulted in greater visibility for the organization, but without necessary oversight or.
Kristen, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions? Kristen, regarding your 88 to 233 drug offenses in the last year, what were the boundaries? Was it the past year that you stated? Was that the time frame?
So what it was 2022 was 88, and then this is the state website report that says 233, and that does not actually, that's 2024, and that does not count December of 2024.
So the 88 is from 2022, 2024 is 233, but it's from the state website.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Member Wright, go ahead.
Thank you. So these were the crimes on the property or in the area?
As far as I know, the crimes were in the area.
Okay, so do you think that 5280 should be responsible for all crimes that are in the area?
I think it's a correlative factor, and we have personally seen arrests at 5280, so I think it's just a piece of it.
Okay, so does that mean that 5280 is calling the police and having people arrested or trespassed then?
Like I said, there was evidence that they did not trespass somebody that was openly using drugs.
But then if people have been arrested, then there is evidence that they may be doing what they should be also.
Neighbors are calling the police.
Okay.
I have personally seen them like shuttle people in before police have come.
I need you to explain, please.
So
when shuttle them into the church?
Correct. So for example, there's a smoking area where we see this activity all the time. You can see them using drugs. You can see it from your house. So it's no surprise that, when we call them to back up, a lot of times they will not answer, and they're supposed to be on call to answer. Okay, so then that leads us to call the non-emergency line. And before and as that happens, because of course then they have a voice message available to them, all of a sudden the people disperse. They're brought into the building or they take off. Other times that doesn't happen, and we've seen them, dealt with at that place, but outside.
Okay. Do you think 5280 has saved lives during these cold snaps?
Do they have saved what?
Do you think they have saved lives during the Arctic blast?
I am not here to go against what their mission is. I very much support that. I am here to talk about the fact that processes have been really weak, which leads us to being more in danger as a resident.
Okay.
It's collateral damage.
Okay.
And we have a front row seat. People don't see it even a couple blocks away. We see it.
Okay. How often do you think you have called the police non-emergency line?
Me personally, maybe maybe 10 times.
Over what time period?
Probably within the last year and a half or so.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Any further questions for members of council? Seeing none, Ms. Vitale, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Up next is Regan Benson from Denver. Hello, Regan, when you're ready to begin.
Good evening,
you can
council.
speak.
How are you? My goodness, it takes me a while to get up here from the back of the room. Here we are.
We're back again. Let the public shaming resurrect. I had a speech, but I gotta change service to the good work that's being done to save lives. Guess what? I know what's going on over there. Everything. You got some problem neighbors that don't want to let it go because they hate homeless people. So they come up here and lie. Lie, lie, lie. Is that loud enough for you, Tenna? Did you hear all the good news today? You guys are 0-5 on your criminal prosecution of me? Nathaniel, why are you such a stupid human being? Why? You had a chance to shine, and you look like a complete moron. Tamara T. Niles, she's not here tonight. Since you guys are busy picking me apart, I wanted to pick her apart and talk about my glasses. You like them? Aren't they nice? Tamara T. Niles, liar, liar, liar. I am not excited that all these cases are getting dismissed and not going to trial. Sean, I mean, you're just a city manager. You can't possibly know what's going on in your own damn city, can you? Giggle, giggle. You liar. You're a liar. That cop out there, I think we might get along. Started out a little rough tonight, but we might get along. We'll see how it goes. Because I'm not going to stop. What this city has gotten away with doing to people, bullying people, you bullied the wrong person this time. You were shown respect and didn't reciprocate with respect. And you want me to come up here and respect you? How's that? Good. Keep looking me in the eyes. Because I'm going nowhere. And you better understand that. And you better understand that. And you better understand that. And you Betty Crocker.
Regan, your 3 minutes are up. Any questions for Regan? Seeing none, thank you for your time, Regan. All right, up next is Kevin Wright. Hello, Kevin. When you're ready to speak, you may begin.
Evening, Council. Kevin Wright, Julian and Tufts. We've been discussing the funding through fees and inspection about affordable housing. But let's be clear, these costs will inevitably fall on the renters, making housing less affordable. Look at our neighbors in Littleton who recently put a hold on similar drastic housing measures. They recognize the folly in increasing density without addressing underlying issues. We in Englewood should follow suit, learning from their example rather than rushing into decisions that will only burden our community. Let's address the payoff fee system that I was introduced to while I was in the affordable housing. $269,000 will buy a developer the privilege not to build affordable housing. I think that's a little bit corrupt. This isn't solving a housing crisis. It's legalizing gentrification, leaving our residents with higher rents and no benefits. Consider also the parking nightmare that comes with densification. Our streets will turn into parking lots, degrading our neighborhood's livability. But there's another critical issue at hand, our infrastructure in Englewood. I know you guys are working on it, but it's still not ready for additional densification and more usage on it than what's already there. We've seen water main breaks, we've seen flooding. How can we even think of adding more density without first ensuring our infrastructure can handle it? We need to demand more than just policy tweaks. We need a fundamental shift on how we approach housing. Developers should be incentivized to build genuinely affordable units, not just pay to avoid them. The community must be at the heart of planning, ensuring new developments meet current residents' needs. Accountability must be transparent, ensuring development benefits the community, not just developers' profits. Infrastructure must be upgraded before any densification to avoid turning our city into a perpetual construction site. I urge this task force and this city council to learn from Littleton, to reject the easy option of payoff fees and prioritize the well-being of Englewood's residents over the convenience of developers. Let's not opt out for short-term fixes that lead to long-term pain. We must champion policies that make housing truly affordable, not just in name, but in reality. Thank you for your time, and let's commit to real change for our community.
Kevin, thanks for your time. Any questions? Go ahead, Member Wright.
Thank you. The standard, how do we know each other?
Well, we're married.
And did I know anything about this?
You wrote the whole thing for me.
Thanks. Threw me for a loop twice tonight. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Kevin, quick question for me. So you mentioned we need to incentivize the developers, the builders, whatever, for affordable housing. Did I hear that correctly?
You did.
Okay. But then you made a comment immediately after that where you said we shouldn't be paying the same developers. So how do we do one without the other?
Well, my concern, Mayor Sierra, is the payment of this in lieu of fee.
Okay.
So the $269,000 that I heard discussed in the Affordable Housing Task Force in lieu of. So if you don't build an affordable housing unit, you can pay us $269,000 and we'll let you slide. That doesn't put an affordable housing unit into our community. What it does is it just gave a developer the permission to slide through and basically commit fraud.
Okay, so you're saying basically don't waive the pay in lieu fee is what your statement is there. But we also need to incentivize in order to build affordable housing. Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Seeing no further questions, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
City Clerk, do we have anyone online? All right, that concludes public comment for tonight. Member Wright, you are giving the response tonight.
Thank you. Kristen and Allison, I understand where you're coming from, and it's a very, very difficult balancing and that's going on. You have a nonprofit that's trying to help people. At the same time, you're trying to live a peaceful life. We need to find this balancing act where everybody can coexist, where those that are less fortunate could get the help that they need, and sometimes they don't want the help that they need. They want to get what they want, and you need to be able to live a peaceful existence in your homes that you've worked hard for. And we need to find a balancing act somehow. It's not an easy answer. I do know that our police force works hard at enforcing the laws that we have, and that's the number one answer. If you see a law being broke, you need to call the police, be it on the property of 5280 or off the property, because we can't ask a nonprofit, a church, anybody. I wouldn't expect you to do something about your neighbor if the law is being broke for you to enforce the law. So we need to use our law enforcement as a resource while we're working through this for a peaceful existence. And I hope that that happens soon. Ms. Benson, thank you for coming and speaking again. I appreciate that you exhibit your First Amendment right. Mr. Wright, Kevin, thank you. I always appreciate what you have to say, even when you throw me for a loop. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight.
Thank you, Member Wright. Member Russell?
Thank you. I'd like to do a council request on the number of crimes at the 5280 in that area, probably for the last maybe 5 years, number of police calls. Thank you.
Member Ward?
I'd like to add to that. I think relevant information in this case is the RP on those calls so that we can make a determination as to which of the calls actually originated from staff or volunteers at Movement 5280 and which of the calls are coming from the neighborhood, and get some statistical data on how that's actually occurring.
Member Noonan-Camp?
I have a council request also related to the Good Neighbor Agreement. Can we get information on the enforcement mechanisms within the agreement and what happens if the agreement is violated? Thank you.
Anything else from members of council? I'll just, Kristen and Allison, thank you very much for coming and speaking tonight. I know it's tough to come and speak here to members of council, especially about this. Thank you very much, though, for speaking up about the fact that you're not questioning the services that are being provided by Movement 52. It's just the quality of life that you're looking to get resolved. It is a very difficult situation that we're in here. They are a church and a nonprofit that are providing services. And their services are a little bit different than what we experienced in the past in terms of them also providing overnight sheltering, but also providing services during the day. It's not something that we've seen in the city over the last 4 years or 5 years that this program is in place, so it's kind of brought up issues that you are encountering within your neighborhood. But I appreciate you coming and speaking your mind and telling us what you are seeing on your neighborhood. We'll obviously continue to have these conversations as council requests get replied to. But thank you very much for coming tonight, and sorry for what you're going through in the neighborhood. So, anything else? With that, we're moving on to the next item, which is consent agenda. I think there was 2 items pulled, 9C1 and 9C4. Were there any others? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9C2 and 3?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to 9C1. This is a contract for snow and ice removal with DCPS Cleaning. Do business as Integrated Cleaning Services. Director Rochelle and City Architect Melinda Goldblich.
Yes, thank you, Council. Director of Public Works, Victor Rochelle. Councilmember Russell, you had a question.
I did, and I appreciate, the one question that I asked was why the names were redacted, and we got a new copy of the names put back in. I noticed that we are no longer using who we had. It said that it said like we've termed out for the number of years that we can use a particular vendor. Is that correct?
Yeah, typically our contracts have a certain number of extensions, and after that, we try to go out to bid to make sure we're competitive in the market and getting the best price for the service.
Okay, so did the people that we used to use, did they bid on the project also?
I'm actually going to turn it over to our city architect who will be able to speak to that directly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Melinda Goldblich, the city architect. And you are correct. The previous company that provided these services did submit a proposal to again get a new contract with the city.
And so were they comparably priced, or we just didn't consider them because we've used them for quite a few years?
No, for the snow and ice removal services, we did receive 8 proposals, and we had 4 contractors or vendors that we called in and interviewed, and the contractor that has provided these services previously was one of the firms that we interviewed. And in the proposals we've gotten with the pricing, they were the most expensive.
Okay, all right, I appreciate that, and I actually do think it's good to, every few years, get somebody else, so I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. I will be supporting, this, so thank you for answering my questions.
You're welcome.
Member Pring? Your light's on? No?
Nope.
All right. Any further questions? All right. Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9C1?
I move to approve 9C1.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Any further comments? Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
All right. 9C4, Member Russell, you also had a question regarding the contract for landscaping, ground maintenance services with environmental designs. City Architect, I think we had the same question for you. Go ahead, Member Russell.
Yes, I mean, I thank you now, I got the unredacted copy, I appreciate that. So, same thing, and did this company we were using in the past, they didn't apply for this one, or they did?
Again, yeah, you're correct. They did apply, resubmit a proposal for the work, so they did apply. And for the landscaping and ground maintenance services, we received 4 proposals, and then we interviewed all 4 contractors, with the previous contractor being, of course, one of the ones we interviewed. Yeah.
Okay, and did they come out higher than the other ones, or were they appropriately priced?
They were appropriately priced, and maybe to add some clarification, they've been providing the services to the city, but they've been changing company names. So they had started out as TerraCare, and then along the way, a few years ago, their company name changed to Arrowhead Landscaping, and now more recently, the name was changed again to oh, no, it slipped my mind, to Environmental Designs.
And that's who we hired, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So, that was one of my questions. Did we hire them? I mean, I didn't ask these questions to you. Is this the company that we contracted with previously under a different name? That was ultimately my question. So it's not really because the number of renewals for this previous service. So is that why they changed their name? So then they're eligible for contract with us? I mean, that's a little problematic.
No, and to clarify, we would, when they submit a new proposal and we interview them, and again, they provide pricing and comparable, and there are other contractors that do the same, we would be allowed to rehire them based on the new proposal and new contract and so forth. And I don't believe that, or it didn't come up that they had changed the name solely to do that. That I believe was other business interests and so forth.
Okay, I mean, this is a little problematic to me. Just because I've been around for a while and I know the issues that have been going on, so. Where did the other people come out in the price range?
I would need to follow up on that. I don't remember specifically how they were ranked based on their proposed costs.
In the last couple of years, have we had to do any change orders? Maybe with the snow and ice removal, but we're not using them, we're using somebody else, correct?
Correct, uh-huh.
So on landscaping and ground maintenance, have there been any change orders?
Yes, there was the most recent year, yeah. We had done additional work to remove plantings that was dead and actually became a safety issue. And then we replaced some of those plantings and landscaping areas too, where we had pulled out the dead and dying materials.
Okay. So if they're also responsible for ground maintenance, who on the city is making sure they do a good job?
We do have, actually Trey Blake, who wasn't able to be here tonight, has, takes or kind of spearheads to check on the site each day to see what work needs to be done or if any repairs have come up. And then he also confirms that whatever work that, like the landscaping and ground maintenance, moves forward on, that work has been completed and so forth. So or like any irrigation repairs and so forth.
So if they're doing landscaping and ground maintenance, they're not doing general cleanup around the outside of the building, or are they?
Yeah, actually that is included in their contract, that they do the trash removal and the cleanup, the cleaning of the concrete surfaces, and as well as lawn mowing and so forth.
So in bringing that up, I've had a complaint about down by the library entrance, that door, the ashtray down there, it smells down there, there's a lot of trash laying around, cigarette butts and things like that. Are they responsible to clean that up?
Yes, I believe so, yeah, and any problematic areas like that, we do bring to their attention, and they have typically followed up with whatever additional cleanup was needed right away, or power washing to clean the surfaces.
Okay, I just want to make sure that there is an employee making sure that they do their job, and I don't want to, a lot of times companies can get more through a change order than they're bidding competitively, and then they end up with change orders. And if it's our fault, I get that. But I just want to make sure that we're keeping track of them. So thank you for the answers. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Melinda. Thank you very much, Member Russell. Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9C4?
Move to approve 9C4.
Thank you, Member Praying. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Nooncamp. Any further comments? Go ahead, Member Russell.
I will support this, but I want to make sure that we're doing what's best for the city. And if this doesn't work out, I want staff to make sure that they don't get approved again. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Russell. All right, with that, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Director Rochelle and Melinda, for that. No public hearings tonight. Moving on to 11C1. This is a motion for the extension of the Tri-Cities Homelessness Action Plan. We have Deputy City Manager Tim Dodd. Hi there, Tim.
Sorry, I can't walk as fast as I used to. Tim Dodd, Deputy City Manager. So as the mayor said, I'm here tonight to ask for your consideration for approval of the extension of the Tri-Cities Action Plan. As you'll recall, just a couple of quick things. The action plan was first adopted by this body as well as the cities of Sheridan and Littleton in 2021. It was a 3-year plan, so it officially expired in December of 2024. There was a session that was held with a joint council meeting, as you recall, on November 21st of 2024. At that time, you and the other 2 city councils discussed an extension of the action plan for an additional 2 years. Members of this council during that session recommended a few additions related to the use of opioid settlement funds, as well as exploring how those could be used to support the work of Tri-Cities, as well as including a regional consideration of affordable housing and the nexus between that and homelessness, and specifically permanent supportive housing. Those were added to the draft. The draft was presented to this council in early December, I think December 9th. I'm not exactly sure on that date. I apologize. And then it was also the impetus for the intergovernmental agreement, or IGA, that this body approved in early January. So the ask tonight is your consideration of, now that we've done all those steps, of the final action plan and whether you'd like to approve it. So just as a few reminders, the action plan does include 16 projects. 5 of them are new. The remaining 11 were already in the action plan. We recommend, as we've gone over before, that we sunset the workforce development theme. The reason for that is that the major projects in that area have been completed. However, we are recommending that we continue to include performance metrics related to workforce development and the funding that council and the other cities have provided. This budget was the draft. You've approved, obviously, the final budget, which included over $400,000 in funding between the 3 cities. As a reminder, Littleton did pay an additional $62,500. Englewood's share was just over $170,000, if appropriated, of course, annually for a 2-year period. That would be for both a continuation of the Tri-Cities Coordinator, as well as the projects that are in here. As a reminder, the new projects, we aren't recommending any new funding. So the funding that you approved was already appropriated as part of the ARPA funding. And lastly, one thing I want to point out here is that we are still in the implementation phase, if you think about kind of the cycle of project management, but we are also wanting to start monitoring heavily some of the things that we've been working on. And so it's really important to us that we're now infusing the plan with performance metrics that will be able to track our progress. So we invested in these things, we developed them, we implemented them. Are they working? And so that will be a big piece of the plan going forward. Just as a quick reminder, I'll go through each one really quickly. This is something I forgot to change. It's correct in the plan, but I just caught myself that I didn't change it here. The first recommendation is a long-term governance model. That's correct. The action step should read governance, sustainability model, not financial. We'll get to that in the next slide. This one is all about figuring out where we go from here, what the governance model looks like after these last 2 years, if this council and the other 2 councils approve this. The next one is a recommendation also in the governance theme that relates to developing financial sustainability. This is something we've talked about a lot. I think we talked about it the last time I was before you for the IGA. One of the things I really want to stress here is that the city is obviously an important actor. It's a major actor in getting this work done, but we can't do it alone. And that's in terms of actually doing the work, but also in terms of the funding mechanism. And so the things that we want to explore here, I think I talked about what a hosted fund is. We want to explore donations, philanthropic work. What are some of the things that we can do to have funding to continue this program? One thing that I want to point out too, though, is that most of the funding that was tied originally was seed funding to get programs off the ground. So of course, while some of the projects in here will require ongoing funding, it's much smaller than it would be for the implementation costs, which we've already appropriated and mostly spent. The single adult theme is one of the most important. They're all important, but it's one of the ones that really focuses on individual or chronic homelessness in our area. We want to continue to streamline services for single adults. As you know, this spring we'll be opening a navigation center in the Tri-Cities located in Englewood. We want to continue that work by having it not just brick and mortar, but also have an app or an online system. When we looked at different navigation centers across the country, some of them had this. Actually, some of them were this and didn't have brick and mortar. We really wanted to start with brick and mortar, but we also know we need to add this. We also want to keep focusing on street-based services. Piloting safe parking is something I talked about the last time I was in front of you at this, and also continuing to engage our local healthcare providers. Also, as part of the single adult system, we really want to focus the next 2 years on the affordable housing nexus, as well as related to that, the permanent supportive housing study, which is a part of this, continuing to work with our landlords and also promote shared housing options. And also, this is one of the new projects here on the bottom, explore and determine the feasibility of coordinating the different work the 3 cities are doing, like you heard tonight, on affordable housing. Family system, you've probably heard me mention this a couple times, but of the 4 areas in the action plan, this is the one where I think we need to spend, not to spend the most, we need to focus on all of them, but of the 4, this is the area I think we really need to do more work on. Not to say it's been ignored, it has not been ignored, but it just wasn't the focus for the last 3 years. This bottom one here does need a lead service provider. As you're probably aware, there was a decision made a couple years ago. You see this same action item in the individual system as well as family system. The reason for that is how you navigate for families is different from individuals. A decision was made a few years ago to focus first on chronic or individual homelessness. And so the navigation center that you've heard us talk a lot about, that's specifically focused on individuals. So one of the projects that we want to tackle this year and next year, mostly this year, hopefully, is to focus on the family system one. What does that look like? Would likely be its own RFP, it would likely be its own process, it would obviously be in concert with the school districts and the McKinney-Vento coordinators, but I just want to draw that distinction. These are some of the other projects we want to continue to work on with the family system, including collaboration with the school districts. It's actually a federal law. You're probably aware that there is a McKinney-Vento coordinator for every school district. They're responsible for collecting and coordinating data related to families and children experiencing homelessness, and also some of the other projects we want to focus on here that also relate to housing vouchers and some other initiatives. I won't go through these in detail, just to say some of these, the governance ones, are ones that we track internally and also from the PIC count, which will be happening this month, which is the point in time count. The single adult system ones, these are standard safe parking pilot program metrics. So if we launch that pilot, these are metrics, of course we could add some. These are metrics for the navigation center that are actually included in the contract to run the navigation center. And then these are metrics that were included in the contracts for the 2 workforce development projects. So they were required to report on these to us, both for cross-purpose and Bridge House, the Ready to Work program. And then finally, these are McKinney-Vento metrics that are reported by the school districts. And these are public-facing. There's actually in the McKinney-Vento law, I think there was a council request I entered on this, but they are required to provide certain data. Usually it goes through the state and then it gets published, but that's where that's coming from. It's actually a requirement of the law. So I don't have I believe today or next week it's going to Littleton and it'll be going to Sheridan soon. So if you do approve it tonight, I will check with my counterparts in the other 2 cities. And if all 3 cities do approve it, I will let you know and then we will begin working on it.
Tim, thank you very much for your time and for going over this. Member Russell, we'll start to my left. Member Russell and then Member Price.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
Okay. Member Pring.
Thank you for the presentation this evening. So I just want to start off with kind of an ongoing point that's being made around Tri-Cities and ask you, for those who are looking for accountability for dollars allocated to the Tri-Cities effort, how do we give some confidence or assurances that we'll accomplish the remaining goals plus the 2 additional goals in the next 2 years when the success rate for the first 3 years was that 57% completion rate?
Yeah, thank you, Member Pring. It's a great question. The first thing I would say, if anyone is interested in the accountability mechanisms and learning more about what we're doing and how we're doing it, I would really encourage you to go to the Tri-Cities website. So there's way more information that I can go over in the time that I have tonight, but there's dashboards there that basically not only show the completion for different projects, but they also have data from the point in time count. They have other pieces of data that they've collected, as well as from the McKinney-Vento related to family system. What's really interesting about the 57% amount is that The story that that metric doesn't tell is that almost all of the other projects are in progress. So many of these are very complex. I think about the Ready to Work program. I remember I started with the city in 2020. I think I had my first meeting on that a few months later. And while it isn't open yet, it's about to be open. And even though 3.5 years may seem like a long time, for a project of that magnitude, it really isn't. I actually was talking to someone from a county that someone connected me with about a year ago. And when I told them our timeline, they basically said, oh, wow, we're looking at about 5 years. At least. We're probably looking at more than that. I also want to emphasize, though, that even though the total percentage is 57%, the governance part is 82% completed. And I think that also tells another piece of the story, in that we really wanted to focus the first few years on building that strong foundation, because if we didn't have the right relationships, the right agreements in place, we didn't have the coordinator in place, we wouldn't be able to do the other components. I think it also doesn't tell you that even though the workforce development percentage seems low, there were two massive projects in there, the cross-purpose project and the Bridge House Ready to Work program. They're two sides of the same coin, as I think I've explained before. Cross-purpose is for people who are housing vulnerable but are not experiencing homelessness yet. And they get job trained in 12 or 13 different areas in career track readiness. And then Bridge House is similar job training for people who have fallen into homelessness. So those are two major components as well. And then finally, the 57% also doesn't account for the navigation center under single family, because it was still technically in progress, but it's about to open this spring.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that context and additional information. I don't think I have any other questions, but I do have one comment, and I know that we have limited time and limited money, but as much as I love the performance metrics and increasing some accountability around these efforts, I like in the navigation center performance metrics that we have those unduplicated numbers that we're going to be looking at, and I'm just going to continue to push a high hope that I have that eventually were we able to identify funds and a commitment to sustain these efforts, that we would also be looking at duplicated numbers. I think that that information can be equally informative and perhaps would help with some analysis around what's really working and what's not really working around these types of efforts. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Member Prang. Tim, just a quick question for me, just because I see it on here. I know we talked about it during when we all met, the three cities met back in November. The safe parking program, I think we're all at different levels of where the projects stand. I think Littleton is probably closest. I believe they may have identified already a site in terms of where they're looking to pilot that program. Ourselves and Sheridan, not in that state. Am I correct in understanding that, where we're at with that?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think, Mayor, what I also mentioned one of the last times I was before you on this in early December is that the main partner we had been hoping to work with, Colorado Safe Parking Initiative, ceased to exist. And so in addition to looking at locations as well as looking at other components we need to be aware of, I think this is something I'm really hoping this spring we can start to kind of focus on and figure out a new partner that we can work with on it. But yes, it really has not moved as quickly as we'd hoped to. The county had been working on their own pilot around this in other parts of the county that you're probably aware of. And so we will be working with the county on figuring if this is approved, figuring out a new partner and kind of figuring out locations and then engaging you, of course, in every step of the way on that.
All right, thank you, Tim. Just wanted to point out that, yes, some actions on this are moving a little bit slower than others, but perfect. Any other questions from council? If not, can I get a motion to approve 11C1?
I move to approve 11C1.
Thank you, Member Noonenkamp. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Any further comments? All right, seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Nay.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Sorry. Member Wright.
Nay.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes and 2 nays.
Perfect, thank you very much, Deputy City Manager Dodd. All right, moving on to general discussion, Mayor's Choice. I'll be brief. Just want to remind everyone, we have a retreat this Saturday at the South Platte Renew building, so don't come here, don't go to the police station, South Renew. So looking forward to seeing you all there on Saturday. Anybody with council member's choice? Member Wright.
Thank you. Just a couple stuff. So I received a call from someone that sits on the South Englewood Sanitation District, and apparently Englewood owes them over $400,000, and then Englewood also owes South Arapahoe Sanitation over 4 months worth of back billing. Okay, so I don't know what we could do to look into this. I don't know if the Englewood could get a lien on them or bill collectors or what happens with that, but I would like to get that addressed as soon as possible, please. I think they were forewarning us on something bad that could happen. And then, let's see, I had one more, I thought. Oh, also, I also received a request from someone in the circle, the flags, they're kind of torn and looking ragged. So the American flag, the Englewood, and the Colorado state flag. The Englewood flag, which is, white with the green, is looking very dirty. And then the state and the US flag, there's quite a few rips and stuff in it. I don't know what the protocol is, but I'm receiving requests to see if we can make those look a little bit better than what they currently look like. So, all right, I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Member Wright. I think we got Tim taking the notes over there. Anything else from, go ahead, Member Newcamp.
I just have a brief readout from the library board meeting. We met last week. Christina Underhill is running those meetings since we don't currently have a library manager, but she noted that they have 3 excellent candidates, and the library board president, Marie Hata, will be sitting in on one of the panels for that hiring process, but that's moving along quite well. They are also moving into the next phase of the strategic plan. They just wrapped up the citizen kind of engagement portion, or that's wrapping up soon, and we'll begin kind of looking at all of the data and moving that forward. So even as we see some staffing transitions, the library is moving forward in a good direction.
Thank you, Member Newcamp. Member Pring.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a quick second to publicly acknowledge that in one of our last meetings, I was overheard discussing private matters around Member Wright's family, and I have had a conversation with her and restored trust there, but also just wanted to apologize to any members of the public who that caused concern for. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Pring. See nothing else, City Manager or Deputy City Manager, what's Deputy City Manager report?
Sure, I have a quick report, Mayor. Thank you. I just had a quick follow-up question. Member Wright, if it's okay, I'll record both of those as council requests. But could you mention, please, I caught the South Englewood Sanitation District at approximately 400,000, and what was the other one?
South Arapahoe Sanitation, 4 months worth of billing.
Thank you. As the mayor mentioned, we will have the council retreat on Saturday, which we're all looking forward to at SPR. And I just wanted to mention why Manager Lewis left, and just to give you an update on something. So over the weekend, as you recall, as I'm sure you obviously know, the weather was quite cold in and around Englewood. And so we had planning meetings last week that really included a 4-pronged approach. So one of those was having the warming centers open during regular business hours, holiday hours for the library, Malley Center, and the rec center. So I want to thank the staff that was there for those. I also want to thank Emily Van Hake and the police department who coordinated in rapid time purchasing and then providing RTD vouchers at those different locations for people in need. I also want to thank our partner organizations, Hat Force and Movement 5280, for providing severe weather sheltering. And then, as you may know, we did provide a backup shelter because we were worried about capacity at both of those locations. And so that was done at the Malley Center. So I greatly apologize if I forget anyone, but we had several staff members who volunteered to stay overnight, including Manager Lewis. Also Adrian Torres, Christine Leahy, Krista Davis, Brad Anderson, Nancy Baum, Jenny Nolan, Shelley Fritz, Avery Akers, Ben Alexenberg, Kurt Osborne, Michelle Smith, and Andy Bethard. This is really, I think, times when like this, when Englewood shines, when we put out a call like this. We've done it a few times, and we get staff members volunteering to stay late at night in very cold conditions. And so I know that you all appreciate the dedication of staff, and so I just wanted to thank them for doing that. And that's it.
Tim, send them my thanks. It's an amazing job. Quick turnaround by staff and by our partners for, providing sheltering for those less fortunate during these times, especially during these cold temperatures that we had. So thank you very much, Tim, for that. Thank you very much to staff for all they did. And with that, everyone, we are now adjourned. Everyone have a great evening. No meeting next Monday. We'll be back this Saturday, but also the Monday after in February. So have a good evening, everyone.